to help in different areas. Some of them are business, some are family, there's health. So there's a lot of different things. So I encourage you to reach out to Flourish to just sort of get some more information. If you need any coaching or any resources, there's a bunch of women out there who are willing to help from that standpoint. So yeah. Oopsie. I'm not moving. Back up. Okay, so today's talk is going to be 5 common pitfalls of successful entrepreneurs. So here's the deal. I think all of us want to avoid pitfalls. None of us want to fall into any crazy pitfalls. So what I'm going to do today over the next 45 minutes is kind of give you some what to's and what for's. I'll give you a little bit of my background. As she mentioned earlier, I've had various positions, as probably most entrepreneurs have. Corporate America, I've also done some academia, and I've also been an entrepreneur for more than 20 years in some facet, owning a publishing company, which is I have now, and then also a hair care line and various and sundry things that I've done. So I've got a little bit of experience, and I've had a couple pitfalls. So I'm going to give you the advice from my experience to sort of get you through this, so you don't get to all of them. So I want to be respectful of everyone's time. So I'm excited to work with you guys today. And so I wanted to sort of have you guys kind of make it interactive. So I'm going to ask you some questions as we go out throughout the day, and just to kind of make sure you guys are on point, and also I get to learn a little bit more about you specifically. So the first questions I'm going to have is that the question I have down is, before we get started, I want to put into the chat, what is your dream income after taxes? So what is your dream income? If you can just type that into the chat, I would appreciate that, just to kind of see if I'm talking to the right people, because this workshop and this training is really for people who are looking for greater clarity for their goals. If you're looking to set goals and have them achieved, and also shorten your learning curve. As I mentioned before, I have done various and sundry things, and the learning curve is always the part that kind of trips you up and sometimes can keep you from moving forward when the learning seems to be a lot. We're all learning a lot now, Zoom and MS Teams and Google Meet and all the different pieces. And sometimes those can trip you up when you want to get information through. So I'm going to talk about not necessarily those things, but how some things we can do more consistently can help you shorten that learning curve. And then also increase revenue and profits. I mean, I don't know who doesn't want to do that, but if someone does not want to do that, I want to be respectful of your time. If any of these 3 things are not something that you want, as I mentioned before, Flourish has a ton of other resources for you. So you can reach out if you're looking for more health or looking for some other support, then I'm sure you can find something with these ladies. So before we get started, Jen is going to be managing the chat room. So if you have any questions, she'll tag me and say, hey, Lisa, I got a question, or pop in. Other than that, I'm going to just kind of go through and ask you guys some questions. There'll be some interaction, so I'll ask you to put stuff in the chat. And so Jen will let me know if there's anything interesting in there I need to comment on. So how does that sound? Does that sound good? Give me a thumbs up in the chat. Let me know everything's good, from that standpoint, that you can hear everything. Everything's great. So I'm going to give Jen a couple of seconds. Is there anything in there I need to know?
Yeah, folks are saying yes. They want to reach $1 billion, $1 million. So big numbers.
Big numbers. Okay, we're going to get you there. So you may be saying, why should you listen to me? So first of all, a couple things in particular. Jen mentioned a couple of them. I'm a 2-time best-selling author. So I have 2 books that I have published. I'm also a publisher. So I have helped 4 other people at this point, 4 other clients publish multiple books as well. So I have quite a few books under my under my umbrella. And so I generally work with women who are already leaders in their community. They're usually mid-level executives or salespeople or managers, and they're looking to do some additional things sort of to transition themselves out of corporate. They're still working, but they kind of work with that. So a lot of people are that. So I'm also a philanthropist. We have a foundation called Change We Seek, and that particular foundation specifically works with increasing financial literacy. So our family fund is a family fund. So myself, my husband, and my 2 adult children, we're blessed enough to establish the foundation and start to give grants to those organizations. So we are really excited to be able to do that. Also, I have 20 years of executive marketing and sales experience. So various companies I'll kind of go through. And also I'm a success coach. So what I do is build brands. These are a couple of organizations that I have worked for or consulted with over the past 20 plus years. A few of them you may know. Pfizer and Novartis have obviously been in the news a lot lately with the COVID vaccine and some things that they're working with. Procter & Gamble. If you have ever been to a grocery store, which I know all of you have, you've run into all of our products from Crest to Pantene to I think they've sold Depends, this kind of Secret, Old Spice, any of those. I carry that entire brand. I actually, interested of note, we launched the Swiffer. So when I first started, that kind of tells my age a little bit, I think, maybe. So I don't know, but we launched the Swiffer. So I remember when we first started, when they brought it out to us, I was like, what are we going to do with this? And I was on the marketing team that we actually talked through how that works and how we were going to get people to stop using a broom, if anybody even knows what that still is, to actually use a Swiffer and all the different pieces that came with it. So I am part of that evolution. So hate it or love it, we created that brand, Playtex, and Walgreens, Webster University, Indiana Wesleyan University, and also Northwestern. I have taught at all of those institutions, including a couple other ones, but these are the ones that maybe people know the most. So I have literally spent most of my career building brands. So that's kind of what I do. So here's something that's quite interesting. I've built all these brands and they had all these successes. So I got this really bright idea back in 2000 and I think 3 or 4, I started teaching. And as I mentioned before, I did some teaching, as far as adjuncting at night. So I was working full time and teaching. So again, entrepreneur, I'm always doing something different. And I decided to transition full time into teaching. So this, you can probably tell how this is going to go. In the summer of 2008, if anybody remembers the crash, I decided I was going to leave my 6-figure position and I was going to become an academic, and I was going to be a professor. I had taught these classes. I did really well. I started teaching adjuncting at a school in North Carolina and started off as an adjunct. In 3 years, I actually was running a campus. I became a campus president in just 3 years, and everything was going really, really great. And I thought, this is going to be my dream job. When you get older, you can, professors are supposed to be old, so I could have this position till whatever, and I can kind of do this. And I was really successful. I had reached the top level of campus level and was ready to go on to the corporate, go inside I was at a smaller campus, but I could have gone into the main campus. And then it happened. We moved from Raleigh, we were in Raleigh, North Carolina, because I took the position in Raleigh. And they placed me at a campus, another site, and I was there for about a year. And then they decided they were going to change everything up. That it was just going to be like, we're not going to have this campus. We're going to, this is not working. We reorged, and so I had no backup. One of the few times in my career that I didn't have a backup, right? I thought this was going to be the position. Now, this may be familiar for a lot of us, especially right now, that things are going and you don't know if reorg is going to happen. 2020 was one thing. 2021 is a whole nother story, as we can already tell. So when they decided to go a new direction, I was in a town I didn't know anybody. I had made no connections. I did not have a backup position. And so I had moved my husband there. He had quit his job. It was a mess. And so I had built this brand for all these organizations and even for this organization. And now what? I had to stop and rethink what I was doing. Well, the good thing is that out of chaos, there's an opportunity to create. I literally live by that saying. Out of chaos, there's an opportunity to create. And out of that, and let me see, when was that? 2013, we left there. We moved on my husband's job. I didn't have a job at that point. And we moved, and this is what happened. I became a best-selling author. I started a hair care line. We established the Change We See Foundation, and the numbers have gone really gone up. And so what the difference was, I decided to build brand me. in this case, you. So anyone, just check out, is there anyone in here who's experienced any of this at all? Does this sound familiar? That a reorg happened, you thought you had the right position, you have built their brands, but you had never really brand you, and now here you are in a position where you're in a space of, I don't know what to do. I can tell you, I've been there. I'd love to hear your story. If anyone has any, any similar stories, just thumbs up, yes, or this happened to me, or, whatever the story is. I can tell you that using these, avoiding these pitfalls will help you get to where I am right now and plan to continue to go to. So put in the chat room if this story even sounds familiar to you, at least the reorg part, or maybe you're already at the best-selling author, hair care brand and foundation. I would love to hear about that as well. So we're going to get right into it. So one of the things in particular is trying to go it alone. Has anyone tried to? I think women in particular, this seems to be the one that we kind of fall into on a regular basis, trying to do it all. Has anyone ever found that? By the way, before I get into this, Huffington Post and Forbes and other business organizations have sort of vetted these, and I've kind of done a little research, and these are the top 5 specifically. So has anyone tried to go it alone? We think we're supposed to be the one, we're supposed to be the superwoman, we're supposed to, I'm dating myself again, but I'm supposed to bring home the bacon, turkey bacon if you're, not into pork, and fry it up in a pan and never let you forget you're a man. Who's ever heard that? Or somewhere back in the annals of your mind, in the recesses of your mind, how have you ever heard that? First of all, that's too much work. It's just too much. I mean, nobody can do all of that work. That is just a lot for someone to be able to say, okay, I've got to do all those things. The truth is, women still think that, and we don't, and we do it without hesitation or complaint. We're strong. It's like, oh, women are strong, they can handle it. You can birth a baby and then be back to work, next week. And that's completely fine if you really feel up to it, but it's okay to say, it's not okay, right? It's like, if that's what you want to do, then I think you should go for it. But I don't think that it should be required for you to do that. Women are definitely put on more pressure as far as to do everything, right? You have to be a great mom, a great wife, a great coworker, a great friend, a great cousin, a great everything. And you have to do it all alone. You can't ask for help. Well, that actually doesn't work, because it ends up feeling isolated. And that's, especially as an entrepreneur, is not something that you want to do. So having a community of supporters, whether or not you have a mentor, by the way, statistics show that most successful people have at least a mentor and or a coach. That is from Warren Buffett to Richard Branson, to Bill Gates, to any of those people, any of the people you name, Oprah Winfrey, they all have a coach and or a mentor, because they have people they can depend on to continue to support them, and they're not going it on their own. And then know this for a fact: your network increases your net worth. The more people that that know about what you're doing, that you can help support, or they can help support you, and you can help support them, increases your net worth. And I don't mean that by your net worth being like you're not valuable without that, but I can say you can increase that if your network. So building the right network of the right people is a really great opportunity for you to do that. I was working with a client who needed marketing support, and she wanted to, so I connected her with a local university, and they did a free marketing plan for her and a social media package. So she had been trying to do this all along. And because of what we were talking through about, like, who are your supporters? Who are the people in your network that we were able to find her a opportunity to help out some students who needed marketing experience and developing marketing plans, for her to completely get a marketing plan done for free. And sort of develop it. And you'll meet her a little bit later in the presentation, on one of her testimonies. But those are the types of things, like, I'm really good at marketing, but I still have people that I use who know more than I do. Like this whole technology piece, I'm not as good at that as I would like to be, but I know people who are really, really good. And so don't go it alone, because it's not going to be something that you're going to need to do. So, alrighty. So, I think I lost. Okay. So thinking you have to have all the answers. Anyone ever just felt like they had to have all the answers? You want to become a learner instead of expert. Now that's sort of different way to look at things, right? So you want to be a learner. You want to be a lifelong learner, not necessarily expert. What I've found is that people who are extremely smart, they very rarely think that they're that smart. They generally, I have a relative who is a radiologist, and he is an amazing radiologist. But if you ask him anything about rheumatology, he's like, he won't give you any response with it. And that's because he knows enough to know that he doesn't know enough. Right. He knows enough, but he knows he doesn't know enough, and he's not an expert in that area. So become a lifelong learner. Surround yourself with people who challenge you. That's a sort of a carryover. This sort of thinking you should have all the answers is sort of a carryover from that superwoman complex that we were talking about earlier. Who can relate to this? Give me a thumbs up. These two pieces in particular is like trying to go it along and thinking you should have all the answers, sort of kind of go together, but they're different in a way. Not asking questions, but then thinking you should have all the answers. Like, I can't ask questions because then they're going to know that I'm not smart. They're going to know that I don't know. Here's the secret. They don't know either. They didn't know until they asked someone. The only way that I've ever found to get, until this doesn't work, the only way to get the answers is to ask the question. And so surrounding yourself with people who can challenge you. There's a saying out there that talks about you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time around. So have those people that challenge you. And then as an entrepreneur, it is hugely successful. You can get isolated. You don't have the resources you need. And you end up spending a whole lot of time on stuff that really doesn't matter. So don't end up like the lady on the picture where you're at the computer by yourself. You're biting the pen. It's not going to help you. Get a group of people around you. Surround yourself with people who can support you. So this is one of my clients, and this is sort of an affirmation that she gave me, or a testimony. And she's a professor and also an editor. So she's the editor for some of my clients' books. And so she's a professional out there who is a JD and PhD. Again, she knows she doesn't have all the answers. She has multiple alphabets behind her name, but she knows, having a good coach is really a great opportunity for her to sort of develop. So this is sort of her, and I appreciate her for sort of sharing that. The next thing is losing sight of the big picture. So I initially asked you, what was the reason, like what was your dream income? And you guys put millions of dollars in there and some other things. What are some things that you want? Why did you choose entrepreneurship? What was it about being an entrepreneur that was fascinating to you? If you can put that in the chat, that would be great. So here's what happens sometimes. We get overwhelmed and we start doing all the things, the little minutia things, right? So going back to 1 and 2, thinking you have to have all the answers and doing it by yourself. Being successful does mean wearing a lot of different hats, but it's okay for you to sort of put some of those down. We feel like we need to arrange the meeting at work, at church, at social clubs, and stress for time seems to be normal. We feel like being an entrepreneur means you just have to work all the time. And ironically, when we think about being an entrepreneur, we think about having flexibility and having time, being able to control your own time. And then when we become an entrepreneur, we forget to even integrate those things in there. So people are asking, like, well, how do you do that? So the thing is, build that in. Like, when I work with my clients specifically, we build in family time, flexibility, and freedom. We take a look at what they want to put on, what they have on their plate, and we talk a little bit about how to get those things done. Because really the point of becoming an entrepreneur, and the reason people get burnt out, is because they start losing the love for why they wanted to do it anyway. Those things like family, flexibility, freedom, or anything in the chat come up that people were like, what was the reason that they actually became an entrepreneur?
Excuse the background. It's answers are being my own boss, doing what I love. And Rona mentioned that she had her perfect job she loved. When she got pregnant, boss changed and threatened her terribly that she made her quit.
Yep. Those are things that they happen, right? And so we have all these idealistic. Thank you so much, Jen, for sharing that, and Rona as well. And so Rona, it sounds like, this was a great opportunity for you to say, okay, you want to be an entrepreneur because you wanted to have flexibility, family, and freedom, and you didn't want to have someone else kind of dictate over your life. And so sometimes though, if we don't plan for success, then we don't get it. You know, basically people, I mean, you guys have heard plenty of times, people don't plan to fail, or plan to fail, but they fail to plan from that standpoint. So we do things like when you work with a coach, they can help you do things like in the chat, I want you to put something as well. So here's the thing. How many spa kids, you know, like we just had Christmas, we just had the holidays, hopefully my birthday's in December as well. So how many spa kids, and when I say spa kids, bath bombs, bath soaks, have you bought or been gifted in the past 3 years? Put that in the chat room. But just think about that. Like how many, like those spa kits, the little things from Bath and Body Works, or different places that people go to get those little bath things. I mean, TJ Maxx has them all the time, just like, you know, little kits you can get to somebody. How many do you have at your house? Bath bombs? If you thought you, I mean, don't go count them now because you might not come back. But how many do you think you have? Bath bombs or lotions or any of those things to kind of spa yourself? How many of those do you have? Either plan to buy them for yourself or someone gave them to you.
Quite a few, lost count. Every holiday, every year, I had to donate a bunch of it, 12 plus each.
Right. So the interesting thing about that, either you or someone who cares about you thought you need to take a break. That's why they gave them to you. Right. And so building in this flexibility and making sure you have that freedom is extremely important for you to be successful and not lose sight of the big picture. You know, I work with my clients to sit down and say, okay, what are some things that you want to do to reward yourself? We work on very small goals, and we'll say, okay, like I have one client right now, we were talking about time management, and she was like, I just don't have the time. And so we start looking at her screen time on her phone, and she was appalled by how much she was spending time on the phone. And just by focusing on that, she was able to reduce her screen time by 25% in 1 week. And so that gave her time to do maybe some of those bath things, like all those things that we had planned to do for ourselves, and have that flexibility and have that freedom. You know, Rona mentioned that, and also somebody else mentioned, you know, to be your own boss and use your own time. Let's plan some of those things. Like, don't lose sight of the big picture. Give yourself small wins along the way. And those are some things that successful entrepreneurs do. You know, they take vacations. You know, there's no, you know, the ones who are successful they take vacations. You see, you know, they spend time with their family. They have the flexibility to do some things. You know, that 5 a.m. club, I'm part of the 5 a.m. club. So I get up in the morning and get some stuff done. But that means later in the day, I have some time to do that. And then I have the freedom to do different things because of that. So what we try to do is make sure you build that in. Whatever it was, the reason that you wanted to be an entrepreneur, build that time in before you build in anything else, because that is going to keep you motivated. It's going to keep you from losing sight of the big picture. You're going to stay focused longer. You're going to be more effective because you're going to get your wins, and you're going to start getting what you want. People end up giving up because they start to get stressed out and overwhelmed. So make sure you schedule your time, because time is your most valuable asset. So use it to your advantage. So think about that. So this is Dr. Lee, and she is a TED speaker, National Geographic Explorer, and a professor. And I work with her on a couple different things. And this is what we came down with. I stopped asking for what I thought I can get and started expecting to get what I want. And if you start off with that, with the beginning, I'm a big proponent of Stephen Covey's Begin with the End in Mind. And if you start with that, that's what you're going to get. Stop asking for what you thought you could get. Plan to start expecting to get what you want. And if you do that, you will be a successful entrepreneur, because you're not planning for just like, well, let me think if I can get this. If you want, someone mentioned in there $1 million or $1 billion, as far as that, start asking for that. Those are big goals, and I'm glad someone put that down there. Don't be afraid to do that. So this is a big one. I've mentioned Stephen Covey a couple of different times and talk about begin with the end in mind. So forging ahead without a strategic plan. Now, who has ever taken a trip in a car? I'm sure everyone else has. Have you ever taken a trip in a car without knowing where you were going? Like the trip was just like, you're going to pack up your bags and you're going to just get in the car and drive. Most of us have some planning associated with it. Are we going to someplace cold? Are we going to someplace warm? Are we going to fly? Are we going to drive? Where are we going to stay? So we have all these plans of how we're going to enjoy this moment. But we fail to do that when we talk about our businesses. And so we don't have a strategic plan of how we're going to get there. We don't start off with, someone pointed out $1 billion. Like, how did you, like, okay, $1 billion. So like, let's start with that. What does that take? What are the tools we need to take back? If anybody's heard of SMART goals, so SMRAT, SMART goals specifically, I'll put that in. There's a bonus for everyone who's attending the presentation. I have a couple free gifts for you, so hang in there, and I'll send you some of this information and some of the worksheets I use with my clients. Also, an opportunity for you to meet with me, and we can start work on some of these things, with you. They're more specific and more customized. But SMART goals. So making your goals specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, or realistic, and timely are hugely important, because we do all of those things whenever we plan anything else. But somehow our business, especially when we're working full-time position, we don't necessarily have a goal for it. I know one of the things in particular with the hair care line, when it really started to grow a lot, we had a plan for what money we're going to get, but I had no plan on what I was going to do with that money. And so, and I'm meaning that from the standpoint of like, we've been very fiscally responsible through grace, totally. But the point being is that I did not have a specific place for that money to go. And so it literally just sat without me having a place for it to go that I felt like we wanted to. And that's where the foundation sort of came in. And we give 10% of our proceeds to all of our enterprises to the Change We Seek Fund. And so then that became sort of a accountability. Like, what are you going to spend it on? Like, what is your goal? Like, what are you looking to do? The concept is at the beginning of a training, I asked you where your dream income was going to be. We kind of talked about that. So let's start to work backwards. Make money. If money's not your goal, maybe money's not your goal, maybe it's time, but then start there. So make sure that you have a goal, and then assess your aptitudes. Like, what are you really good at? This is a huge one, right? So not knowing what you're really good at. So I'm not talking about a 50-page business plan. Nobody's, doing that right now. So I just need you to articulate in 3 to 5 sentences, what is your goal? So I'm just really quickly, I want to take a poll. Has anyone put together either some type of plan, like, or have they ever heard of SMART goals, or how do they set up their goals? Like, what are some things that you do, like, to set your goals? And even when we're talking about your goals for making sure that you don't lose sight of the big pictures, like, my client, when she reduced her screen time by 25%, she gave herself an extra hour of sleep. And so she was like, she goes, sleep. She goes, I don't know why I don't get enough sleep. And she goes, now I found my sleep. And so that was her goal, to get more sleep. And so we found that time, and now she has more sleep. And so she's happy, she's motivated, she's continuing to work on her book and her business because she's motivated by those things. So how many people in here do you set goals on a regular basis? And what vehicles do you use to set goals? Jan, we have any feedback at all from people who are setting goals?
Goals, yes. I just write them down.
Okay. All right. What about, so SMART goals, making sure your goals are SMART. And what I say by that is specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. So I think it's important to write it down. There are studies that show if you write it down, it has a better chance of getting done, but sort of going with that. I work with my clients a lot using SMART goals. We also use other tracking things to sort of keep you focused, and also assessing your aptitudes. Like, what are you really good at? And the reason I point out the assess your aptitudes, because what I work on this principle is positive psychology. So all of my coaching is around positive psychology. So it's about taking the positive. And so what are you already really good at? Because I believe, and studies have shown, is that if you're really good at something, you can get exponentially better faster. If, however, you're not really good at something, you will only get incrementally better. And that's when we also go back to number 1, and we start talking about how we find people in your circle or not going alone. Because the things that you're really good at, like, I'm pretty decent at marketing, and it sort of comes naturally to me. So it's something I kind of do. I have people I talk to, but when it comes to technology, I find other people. And so I don't spend a lot of time trying to learn about technology, but I know I have a team of people that I can go to, but I continue to work on my skills as a marketer because I get exponentially better. And so having a plan and knowing exactly what your aptitudes are, and some people call them your strengths. I do use the strength finder as far, from that standpoint. The Streets Out of 2.0, if you guys are familiar with that, we do an assessment too to figure out what are you really, really good at, because you can get exponentially better. You can grow your business faster if we sort of put those things in front of you. The things that you struggle with, it's best if we start to look for opportunities for other people to do that, because you will only get incrementally better, and that ends up slowing you down. And again, successful people, that's what they do. They know what they're really good at. Going back to my relative who's a radiologist, he's very good at what he does. But the things that he's not really good at, he's not actually working on those. Like, he's continuing to go in his direction, and he's getting people on his team that can kind of go with that. So I want to encourage people to really look at a plan and look at it more strategically. So here's another one of my clients. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Lisa, yeah, so Blockology coffee companies say create potential sale goals based on historic data, market research, and so forth.
Right. Right. So yeah, so we help kind of walk you through like how to find those things, how to find those goals, how to set them realistic. I think that's what Blockology is talking about, like setting realistic goals. You got that down, right? So that realistic, but like, let's make sure that they have all the components, like that they're specific. Like, what is the one thing we're trying to achieve? How are we going to measure it? Percentage wise, time wise, whatever we're going to do it, making sure it's attainable. And then your point, basically realistic, using past data to be able to say, okay, this is what I've done in the past. I need to grow by this incremental percentage, what the industry has done. And then it's really important to have a timeline on that. Like, we're going to do this in 6 months. We're going to do this in a year. Is it a short-term goal? Is it a long-term goal? Short-term meaning, in my case, usually 6 to 12 months, and then long-term 3 to 5 years. And so being able to sort of put those things in bucket. Because what happens is, I find a lot of entrepreneurs, what happens is they want to do everything at the same time, and that doesn't work. And that goes back to that thing of forgetting the big picture, right? Getting overwhelmed. And so being able to set smart goals that are short-term, long-term, again, short-term meaning 6 to 12 months, and long-term meaning 3 to 5 years, is being able to say, okay, I don't have to do all of this right now. I can do these other pieces. And then you can kind of integrate those in there. So thanks, Blockology, for putting that down. So great job on making it, realistic and using data to sort of support that. So this is another one of my clients. I'm not in her field, but she offers perspective insights to help me discover new opportunities to grow my business. There have been times in the past year where I felt like I couldn't breathe anymore. She shows up giving me air and a second wind. And that's really what you want. You want to have an opportunity to continue to have those successes. Again, she's a professional and the CEO of her own company. This one is huge. This is sort of the one. They're all important. They're all important, but this one is huge. Not articulating what differentiates you. So one of my favorite quotes, you may remember this. If you have small kids, you probably know this. You are you. You are true. That is truer than true. There is no one alive who's youer than you. This is Dr. Seuss, if anybody doesn't know. You have to figure out what makes you unique. And when we talk about USP, unique selling position, like what is unique about your service, about your product, and really understanding what that is. You should speak to every one of you, no matter, your voice matters. You have what the world needs. And so you need to figure out what that is specifically. You were designed specifically with gifts and talents that really make your business different. What was the reason? Why do you feel like you needed to do what you do? The Blockology Coffee Company, what is specifically different about your company? What's your unique selling position? You want to share that at all, Blockology? What is your unique selling? What is so special about Blockology Coffee Company?
All right. Hey, my name is Lori.
Hi, Lori.
So what makes us different is we are here to cultivate a love of Black coffee. So enjoying the natural flavor profiles of coffee in its truest form, which is Black, as well as kind of introducing people to the fact that there is good coffee and not just the lattes and the milkshakes and things.
Okay. So does your coffee come from any specific area? Are you kind of global, or tell me a little bit about the origins of your coffee?
So we do have quite a few African coffees, and our African coffees come from women-owned coffee farms
Okay.
in Burundi, in Rwanda, and other places. And then the blends are things that I've created over the last 3-4 years from Black and Brown communities.
Okay. So I'm going to ask this question. Are you sort of giving that as sort of your, this is going to be sort of you may have already done this. And so awesome if you have, if all these questions you have answered, awesome. But I'm going to show everyone else how this going to work. So do you talk a little bit about like the fact that these are East African coffees, which most people don't. Burundi and Rwanda are sort of that East African area. So that's sort of that is the coffee that everyone else now has. Mm-hmm. So is that part of your conversation about like, this is East African coffee, the original coffee?
In some cases, yes. So it's been, I've been trying to, I guess, I don't want to say make a pitch, so to speak, but I have pitched in a few competitions, but briefly touching on it, but not going into too much detail. But I'm still kind of fine tuning everything that I want to say without giving too much information to the point that people get bored.
Okay, all right. That's fair from that standpoint. So you have a unique selling position. You have a coffee that is women supported, right? So there's a group out there who look for organizations or businesses to support that are sort of funded by women. You also have East African coffee, which is not a coffee that people are maybe familiar with as much. And so that brings a new sort of dimension to coffee. You know, we're familiar with all the other coffee blends and we think we know where they're from, but to really kind of have that, and I'm not saying go too much into history, but it sort of gives your coffee this sort of elevated status of being the original from that standpoint. And then niching your market. Who do you think can appreciate, like really understanding who can appreciate this coffee? Are we talking about, is there like a coffee competition? I don't know. Is there a coffee competition out there, Lori, that you should be considering, or like who is your niche market?
There are some various competitions, but the mindset that I have is, in my mind, when I launched Blackology, I want to directly go up against Starbucks, because I still want to, there's still a brand associated with it. But I also want to, sorry.
No, you're fine. Go ahead. She had to consult with her team to figure out what else the next thing is going to be.
Sorry, that was my 6-year-old.
What did your team say? Always that's your family is your team, whether or not they want to be or not. So they're your team. So you were just consulting with your team. Go ahead.
So I forgot what I was saying.
So you were talking about you going up against Starbucks, and that was your direct competitor. So you were looking at a Starbucks model as far as having multiple locations, or
franchising at some point. Yes. So I was a diehard Starbucks fan, not necessarily for the lattes, but I liked all of like the Komodo dragon blends and all the different types of coffee. And I was like, look at how much money I'm giving Starbucks. And I know that I love coffee, and I know that my background is being a chef. So I know that I have a natural palate for flavors and things like that. So creating something like that, it is a brand. People love the apparel. So there's a lot of different aspects to it. But it's also like a cultural thing. It's something different. I picked the name on purpose because it means different things to different people.
Right, and that's why I asked specifically. It's like what, when you said black coffee, so without sugar and cream and all the other pieces, but just straight coffee. And so niching your market, I would love to talk to you a little bit more, and I'll give you an opportunity to do that, about subscription services. Have you considered those, and how are you doing this virtually? Because right now, obviously, this is not you know, there's Starbucks I don't see packed. I mean, I've been to, you know, you go through the drive-through, and so it's a little bit different. And so how to pivot and maybe really find a really great opportunity in that pivot to sort of niche that market, that Starbucks. Because here's the thing, a client of mine recently, we were talking through, and he's, I shouldn't say he's a client, he's more of a mentor for me. And he was talking about how this is an amazing opportunity now to start a business because everyone's starting over. So like Starbucks wasn't prepared for this either. They didn't have there was not a plan for this to happen. So you and Starbucks on that level are exactly in the same spot. And so the thing with Starbucks is they're a multi-million-dollar, multi-location that when they get ready to change something, there's like a whole process that has to happen. It's like turning around a ship, right? You're pretty nimble. And so if you can figure out what that thing is that people are going to turn to, you and Starbucks are equally yoked. Now, granted, they can ramp up, they can scale faster because of the money, but you can get in and kind of take the lead on some different things. So he was just talking about how like right now is the perfect time for entrepreneurs because this is the time where everyone is starting over. Like everyone, whatever plan they had, this was never in the plan. And so to run with that. So yeah.
So I launched in July and I started in an online platform. So most of my sales comes from online sales, but I do occasional pop-ups like setting up here.
Okay, cool.
And that, you know, still trying to figure it out. But again, I got to pivot there because this place is getting ready to close permanently. So.
Okay. So yeah, so those types of things, finding your niche market, like really who are the people who really would get into black coffee? Like there's got to be coffee connoisseurs out there. There's got to be people who want to look and really figuring out who they are and then expand on your strengths. So a little bit more about, you know, where the coffee is, how the coffee is created. You know, those people really like that kind of stuff. And then you already have apparel. So that's a great line extension for you. You know, when I talked about Procter & Gamble, one of the things that I learned from Procter & Gamble was their line extension game is amazing. You know, that's why there's 18 different flavors of deodorant, of Old Spice or Secret, right? You walk in and there's like unscented, baby something and shower something and whatever. And it just, they take one thing and just change it a little bit and keep going with that. And so really looking at line extensions and growing those types of things. So expanding yourself. So now articulating what makes you truly different. Unfortunately, especially a small company, you get lost. And so figuring that out and trying to figure out exactly what that is and how that's going to work is hugely going to be a big part of successful entrepreneurs. They figure out what they do really well. They know their unique selling position. They know their niche market, and they're really good at their expanding their strengths. So which of these pitfalls do you need the most help with? Trying to go it alone. I'll let you put in the chat room. So either trying to go it alone, when you're just thinking, I got this, I can do this by myself, I don't need any help, I'm good. It's like thinking you have all the answers. Like if I don't know it, it must not be important, so it doesn't matter if I don't know it. Losing sight of the big picture, overwhelmed, overworked, not happy doing what you're doing as an entrepreneur. Forging ahead without a plan. Like, I don't really know where I'm going with this. I just know I'm going to go forward with it. And there's nothing wrong. I always talk about fail forward, but I think you should have a plan. Like you should be failing in the right direction, you know, from that standpoint. And then also not articulating or really understanding what truly makes you, differentiates you. So I'm going to ask everybody to put it in their chat and just put the number of the one that you feel like you need the most help with.
Rory is saying 1 and 5. Tanya is saying 1.
Okay, so 1 and 5, 1, okay, 1, okay, so good. So we've got 1 seems to be the one trying to go it alone. And that's not, I'm not surprised. I will say full disclosure, I have done all 5. So at some point in my career, all 5 have been one of my Achilles heels. But here's the deal. How has this affected your quality of life, your health, your relationships, and your income? Think about that. So what have been the repercussions of going it alone? I can tell you for me, it was being overworked, being overwhelmed, feeling like I was by myself, feeling isolated. Sometimes people, you know, depression sets in. Quality of life, you're not, you know, enjoying it. Your relationships, you feel like, you know, my husband would try to help and I would be like, I got it, whatever. It's like, you know, whatever. And then income, because I can't maximize. Again, your net worth And I mean that by money. Your network increases your net worth. So understanding that if you understand to increase your network, you will increase your net worth. And so not doing that and not using other people or having those other people do that. And so also I'm going to ask you guys too to put in the chat, what would happen if you do nothing to address these pitfalls? If you don't make another step from this conversation and you just go, yeah, I know one is my thing. You know, I've got one is I'm kind of trying to go along and I don't really articulate my true difference. But so what's going to happen if you don't do it? If you don't do anything? If you do nothing, what will happen?
Failure becomes stagnant.
Okay, so failure becomes stagnant. So would you like for me to show you a path to avoid these and other pitfalls? So before I go to the next slide, I have a free gift for those who signed in. I'm going to put a bit.ly into the chat. Let me see if I can do that really quickly. Oh, well, before we leave, I'll do that. Well, I can do it now. Stop share. So in the chat, there's a bit.ly, and that bit.ly specifically is going to give you a couple different things. I'm going to go back to sharing the screen. And also Jen is going to send us out a little bit later as well. And in that, I'm going to help you set goals. So the SMART goals I talked about earlier, you're going to get a template for that. So you can kind of walk through SMART goals to see what you have from that standpoint. One thing I did not talk about specifically, but I guess I did a little bit when we talked about, you know, that flexibility piece, or the piece in particular of losing sight of the big picture, a gratitude journal. There's a ton of studies out there to show that people who are grateful tend to stay focused on the reasons that they're doing things and being really successful. It also reduces your stress level and helps with your health. So there's a 7-day gratitude journal that you may not be able to take a bath with all that bath stuff that you have at your house that you haven't used or given away or donated to, but you can take a couple seconds to do a gratitude journal, and it will tremendously lighten your mood and get you sort of focused as well. And then also there's a link for you to reach out to me through the Flourish website to get a really quick conversation where we can talk about a customized plan for you. So those are my gifts for you for spending the past 50 minutes with me to sort of walk that through. So I'm going to stop. Well, I'm going to go ahead and switch over to the next slide. Why is this not moving? Okay, maybe not. There we go. So you can reach out to me here at flourishall.com, and you can, for free 30 minutes with me. If you have any questions, you can use that link or the link that's in the bit.ly, and we can kind of walk through. It's free. There's no, you know, cost or whatever to it. I would love to talk to you, Lori, a little bit about your business. And so, you know, I'm willing to set aside the 30 minutes to make sure that you know, sort of get a plan moving forward and talk a little bit about maybe some unique selling positions. So I'm happy to do that. You've taken your time for me. I want to share my time with you.